Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to episode 1 of San Bernardino Zoo. We're building a huge, ultra-modern, realistic zoo, and we're building it in franchise mode because I am a sucker for punishment. So I have big plans for this zoo, but before we go any further, I just want to take a look at this. This is our drone cam, and this is going to be positioned above where we're building, and let us see what we have and where we're going to get to. So let's take a look at that now. Not much to see as you would expect, but at the end of the video, we're going to see this filled in with everything that we've built today. So what are we building today? Well, we're going to start appropriately enough at the entrance and then move on to our first habitat. So the entrance to this zoo is going to be a big concourse, 2 stories up in the air, which gives the guests a view over the whole zoo. Should look pretty spectacular if I can get this right. And then the first thing that they will see as they look down from that is a set of water terraces which are going to have flamingos and frogs and various other aquatic species in them. I think that's going to look really cool. And then underneath the entrance, what I'm building here is going to be a transport hub, which is where the guests get into the zoo. So the first thing that I'm going to build is some lifts. It's probably not escaped your attention that there are no lifts in Planet Zoo, so we're going to have to make them ourselves. So what I want to do is have the guests go into a lift and then a few seconds later appear out of the door of the top of the lift. So I'm going crazy with the pathing here to get the guests to come in and out at exactly the same point above where they went in, if you see what I mean. So it took some doing, so I thought I'd leave it in. Sometimes you watch YouTube videos of people building zoos and they just don't seem to have the pathing troubles that everyone else has. That's because we edit them out. So I thought I'd leave them in here so you can see how long it took to get these paths to do what I want them to do. But where you see those plastic blocks, those are going to be lifts. I might make them myself. I might use Shiftsy's incredible lift pack. I'm not decided yet. But guests will walk through those out of the coach that you see there. And then, as if by magic, they will appear in the top door of the lift a few seconds later. So that's the plan. We're going to hide the entrance spawners. I love the fact that you can move the entrance in franchise mode now. That makes such a difference instead of just having to sort of leave the entrance there and cover it up. I got really lucky with my last franchise zoo, Tecton Zoo. I made it during a patch where, for some reason, I think Frontier accidentally allowed you to not only delete the entrance, but get all the money for deleting it. So you could delete the 4 entrance spawners, get hundreds of thousands, and then just build like 1 or 2 new entrance spawners somewhere else and have loads of spare money to start the zoo with. Sadly, those days are gone, so I'm gonna have to do this one properly with $40,000, same as usual. So with that being said, we've got to be very careful with our money at this stage of the zoo. So what I'm going to do today is get the basics of the entrance built, get the mechanics of it working, like these ticket gates here, and make sure that guests are going to be able to get from the entrance spawners in the coach up onto the elevated concourse and then down into the zoo itself. And once that's done, we'll move on to building the flamingo pool. So with franchise mode, it's really important to get things right at the start, because once you run out of money, you need to open the zoo to get more money. And if things aren't working at that point, you're going to start losing money and then you're going to be in all sorts of trouble. So we're going to build a path to get people from this sort of early version of the entrance down to the zoo itself. So I'm just placing these little bits of path slightly below each other, which we can then join up to get a path with a much more gradual gradient. We need to get some gradients that you could feasibly get a wheelchair down, and just in general you could walk up or down without too much exertion. So we'll put another one on the other side as well, so the guests have got 2 choices of paths to go down so we don't get bottlenecks. And then the bit of path you can see extended at the top is going to take us round to a monorail. That'll be something for a later episode. But yeah, that is pretty much the entrance done for the moment. Obviously that's just a path, that is not what it's going to look like. The whole thing will be covered in concrete and plaster and plants and things like that. But this just gives us the paths for the guests to walk around so that we can get them down into the zoo. We'll put the basic staff buildings in. I only need 3 really to begin with, and we can get away without a quarantine or a vet surgery to begin with, because the flamingos that we're going to be putting into the zoo are coming over from Tecton Zoo, so they are all in very good health. We'll go and take a look at that a bit later on and select a few to bring over here to start a new colony. let's move on to the flamingo habitat. So the flamingos are going to live in a big pool with an island in the middle, and it's going to be one of the first things that the guests see. So I want this to be really beautiful. And this is where the majority of our money is going to go before we open the zoo. So when we do open the zoo, I don't know whether the entrance is going to be completely finished. I doubt it, to be honest, with the amount of detail that I want to put into it. But I want the flamingo habitat to be absolutely perfect so that we've got something beautiful to see at the end of the episode. So we're going to be no expense spared here. We're going to dig out the terrain. I want a few different levels of the water so that the flamingos are walking rather than swimming for the majority of the time. But then it gets deeper towards the edges because this habitat is going to have no barriers. It's got this bank at the side of the water that you can see here. And with the depth of the water and the rock work that I'm going to put in now, that'll be enough to keep the flamingos in here. So we're going to do this by basically getting one of these aquatic rocks, getting the colour right, and then mixing some of the plant panels into the top of them so they're almost completely covered. And then we'll make a couple of variants of this and then copy it all the way around the banks at the side of the water. And when it's finished, it's going to look really nice and natural, but also just have that touch of sort of slightly zoo looking rock work, so it doesn't look like a pool just happened to be there. It still looks like a zoo habitat, but as beautiful as possible. That is the concept. So once I'm happy with this one rock, we'll make a little variant of it, and then we will start spamming this all the way around the side of the pool. We'll go about 2/3 of the way around and leave a gap at the back, and we'll put a shelter in there for the flamingos. We're going to have a waterfall and then some more extensive rock work so that parts connected to the land are still high enough that the flamingos wouldn't be able to get out. So let's get onto the shelter. Now obviously it wouldn't be one of my zoos without some white concrete in it. You know that. So that's what this shelter is going to be made out of. We're not going to be going for the sort of 1930s modernist Tecton look in this zoo. I'll tell you a bit about the history of the zoo in a second. That'll explain it a bit more. But for the majority of the zoo, we're going to go for an ultra-modern look, which does allow us to have some white concrete, which is nice. But it's going to be a lot more modern looking, basically. And yeah, while I put that shelter together, let's talk about the history of the zoo. So San Bernardino is a small city in Southern California. I doubt it'd be big enough to support a zoo of the magnitude that we're going to be building here, but I wanted to set the zoo in Southern California and I didn't want to put it in San Diego, so I just found somewhere else that was kind of suitable, and I like the name. That's going to enable us to build a zoo with loads of nice foliage in it, not have to worry too much about it being, minus 10 degrees in winter and stuff like that, like we have to in Tecton Zoo. Much nicer weather in Southern California. This zoo will be very slightly inspired by San Diego Zoo, because I'm lucky enough to go there, and it is really, really scenic. And there's a massive budget, but there's not going to be a lot of influence in terms of architecture or anything like that. This is going to be, like I say, an ultra-modern zoo, and I'm going to be taking influences from zoos all over the world and coming up with a lot of my own designs, mainly, to get a really just sort of beautiful high-end zoo, really. The main influence on this early part of the zoo, the entrance, I'm using a master plan for a collection of zoos in Singapore, which is being built at the moment to basically join all of the zoos in Singapore into one huge experience, really. And some of the master plan just looks absolutely incredible, and budget is pretty much limitless in Singapore. There's so much money there. It just looks like it's going to be absolutely incredible. And so some of the ideas are going to come from that. Some of them are going to come from zoos all over the world. The zoo itself will originally have been built in the early 20th century. So it's quite an old zoo, and that enables us to have some old school habitats in here as well as the really modern stuff, and then do things like create older buildings which have then been repurposed and redesigned and improved into new habitats and stuff like that, which if you've watched my Tecton Zoo series, I love to do. So basically making it an old zoo that has a very, very high budget and is still around today, and setting it in 2023 enables us to really use the whole sort of scope of the history of zoos in the design of it. But certainly in this first entrance area, we are really going to be concentrating on very modern, very high budget stuff. So let's get back to the flamingos. So this is their island. We're going to hide a little forage pool in here, as we do so often. And this is actually the first time I've ever used flamingos at the entrance of a zoo, which is sort of the classic zoo thing to do. They are one of the most popular animals to have in the entrance. But I prefer penguins normally. I think I've used those twice. And then I think it was otters in the wetlands, and then raccoons in the Moonlight World. That is a bizarre entrance animal, but still. But yeah, I thought it was about time I built a flamingo habitat at the entrance of a zoo. And with it being a set of water terraces, there's going to be pools all over the place. Flamingos were definitely one of the birds that I thought would do well. We might even look at the red-crowned cranes, but I'd have to do a bit of research. I'm not sure how happy they'd be somewhere as warm as a Southern Californian summer. We'll see. I'm going to edge off the pool with these plaster pieces to make it look man-made. This is a little trick I learned, I think, from Romano Palacios when he built a flamingo habitat in the wetland zoo. I really liked the way the edges of the raised areas in that habitat looked. So with his permission, I stole his idea. So I'll be using that just to sort of sort out the edge of this and make it look man-made. And then we're going to cover it in plants and grass and make it look really lush, with just these little bits of concrete poking out at the edge, so that you sort of get that feel that this island has been built and then planted on, rather than it just sort of magically appearing in the middle of the lake. So I hope you like the style of this video, by the way. I'm trying something a bit different with this series. Normally I do my habitat videos and my zoo build videos by essentially taking all the footage, speeding it up to 6 times normal speed, and then cutting out the boring bits. With this one, I'm sort of doing it the other way around. I'm selecting the interesting bits and then just doing them at 2 or 4 speed, or sometimes even in real time. Hopefully that will make it more comfortable to watch and with less of the sort of neck-breaking camera moves that you get in normal speed builds. Let me know in the comments what you think of it, if you like this style, or if you prefer the old style. I'll be really interested to know. And yeah, let's get some more rocks in. This was a trick that I think it was Beezy, who I built Pomojo Wildlife Park with, amongst others, is basically if you ever build anything generic, always blueprint it. Like if you build these rocks, for instance, I built for the Land of the Leopard episode of Planet Wild, when I needed to cover the edge of a river with some rocks, because it's a nice generic arrangement. I blueprinted it, and now whenever I need a load of rocks, I've got a really nice, really natural set of rocks that took me ages to build, just sat in my blueprints that I can drop in and then modify to whatever area it's going to go into. So we'll make some changes to it to get it to fit this area perfectly, but then you've got a nice pile of rocks in about 5 minutes instead of, taking an hour to put them together. We'll cover it up with loads more foliage. I don't want any of these plant boards to have visible edges, so you can see that it's been copy pasted. We'll get some reeds in for the flamingos to go behind, because for some reason in Planet Zoo they're quite shy. I don't know how shy flamingos are IRL, but the fact that about 50% of the zoos in the world have a big flock of them right next to the entrance would suggest to me that they do pretty well with lots of guests around them. But maybe Frontier knows something I don't, so we do need to put something in there to keep them away from the guests, or to give them somewhere to go behind when there are lots of guests, so they don't get too stressed. And then it's on to the finishing touches. So I'm going to put some decals where the water meets the rocks, so you get that sort of scum line that you get IRL, and we'll put a load of those in. And then I almost forgot that the keepers needed to be able to get to the forage pool, and they can't swim, so we put a bridge in using the African hut base, which is one of my favourite pieces in the game to build things like this. I pretty much always use these. It looks so good for bridges. We'll sort this out, get this looking good, and then it's time to get the flamingos in. So here we are back in Tecton Zoo. We've got about 40 flamingos here. I'm going to select 14 of them and bring them over for their new life in San Bernardino Zoo. So I've hired our first staff, and our first animal is on its way into the zoo. Here he comes now, into the finished flamingo habitat. And there we go, our first animal. Let's get the rest of them in and take a look at the habitat. I really like this. It's lush, it's beautiful, It's going to sit really nicely into the middle of the water terraces. I think this is a really appropriate habitat for the guests to see first. It has been such a pleasure to do this video. It's so good to have a massive new franchise zoo to get stuck into. It's been a while. I really hope you guys like it. Let's take a quick look at the aerial view. That's what we've got done today. Next time we are going to finish the entrance and open the zoo. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time for episode 2. Bye.